Dr. Rita and thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode. Have you ever noticed something unusual in the sky? Was it a UFO? Of the countless people who have witnessed UFOs, one thing is consistent. They're forever changed by their experience. But what about the rest of us that want to believe but have never encountered something unusual transiting the heavens? To delve into this topic, we'll be talking with Bill Forte, the host of Skywatch, a live Skywatch in New York. Bill Forte had his first sighting in New York City, specifically the Bronx, on June 10th of 1995. He witnessed a boomerang or triangle-shaped craft. It was documented on NUFORC, which is the International UFO Reporting Center. He also had a second sighting in 1999 while night fishing in Motonk, New York, where he witnessed unusual lights over the ocean that were consistently flashing with different colors for about 20 minutes. He started skywatching when he moved to the Hudson Valley, which is known as a hotspot for UFO activity. He is the host of Skywatch, and his webpage is ufonightvision.info. So please welcome Bill Forte. Hey, Bill, how's it going?
Hey, Dr. Rita, it's a pleasure to be on with you.
It is wonderful to have you on the show as well. It is actually, I'm very excited about the whole thing.
I'm excited too. You can see what I've got around me. But you know, it's interesting that you opened up with that because it was a life-changing event when I seen what I saw the first time, because that's really what started it all. In '95, I was looking out my apartment window. I was living in the Bronx at the time, and I was looking. My window faces Manhattan, and they were showing Pocahontas in Central Park that night. And it was about 11 p.m. There was a thunderstorm, and I could see the hue of the fireworks being, shot off at the end of Pocahontas. So I always enjoyed looking at lightning. So I'm looking up and I see a craft go over my building, like really fast. It had 5 bluish white lights underneath it. I couldn't really make out the craft itself because it was dark and it was moving really fast. But just from the outline that it formed, it was 1 there, 2 there, and 2 here. So if you put that together, it forms a triangle or boomerang. Mm-hmm. And again, I couldn't see what it was. So yeah, I reported it to Peter Davenport, who's the head of NUFORC, and he told me a few days later in an email, Bill, you weren't the only one that's seen it. It was seen from New York City up the Hudson River, all the way into Canada. Wow. By many. And they always add the credibility factor. He mentioned police officers and lawyers, to give it that the credibility. It's not like Joe Schmo looking out his window, sitting at home. So yeah, it was changing because it really made me think about creation, how life started here, which I'm really into now, looking at ancient archaeology and looking at that. But it really was life-changing. And then again, like you mentioned, I had a sighting in '99 in Montauk, which is a beach fishing area at the eastern tip of Long Island. And I seen that with other people. So it wasn't just like I was by myself. Actually, my mother was with me and she ran to the hotel room. She had the fear of death in her. She was gone. So then when I moved up here, I really started to get my interest up because this area was conducive back in the 80s and 90s for this type of activity. There was a lot of boomerang and triangular-shaped objects that were seen up here, supposedly. And I actually spoke to a local police lieutenant, and he told me that a lot of the retired officers here did see craft off the record. I asked him, would you go on the record? No, he wasn't going on the record. But yeah, that's how my interest started with skywatching. And as you can see, that's what I do currently today.
Well, and I find it interesting that there is this constant shift that people encounter. You know, they're seeing something weird in the sky. That's one thing. And then there are people that have UFO sightings or believe they have UFO sightings. And it seems like there is just something that is really life-changing, you know, with that whole event. And I find that fascinating. That it goes so deep. You know, not that they necessarily go out sky watching or investigating UFOs, but there's just something within the core of their psyche that is forever changed by that experience.
Well, you know, like, since I've been doing the sky watches now for 2 years, and it's on a consistent basis, I've come to understand that a lot of the objects, I would say 99% of them, are explainable. You get to understand what you're looking at. You have to, you know, gain the eye, the experience of what you're witnessing. Because everything that I get on my cameras, I record on a DVR system. And then I'm able to analyze and go through the footage and see exactly what I'm picking up. A lot of it is space debris, meteorites, man-made objects, natural phenomenon, bugs. I mean, there's a lot of explanations for the things that you capture on camera. So you have to be really careful when you start saying UFO. Now, by
how can you tell the difference between space debris and an actual UFO that you're picking up on camera?
What you're looking for, okay, remember, by definition, it's an unidentified flying object. The better word that a lot of people use today is UAP, the acronym, which is unidentified aerial phenomenon. Because you don't really know exactly. When I capture something, I'm not saying it's alien in origin. I don't know what it is. So by definition, it's just unidentified. But as you're saying about trying to identify, certain objects leave certain trails. If something's moving quickly, it will leave a discernible trail behind it. Even a plane with the exhaust, it will leave that trail behind it. Usually the key is to look for an object that's moving really odd. It's where it's going in a straight line, and then it'll maybe take a 90-degree. You know, that's something that you say, okay, that doesn't look like a natural phenomenon. Now, I've captured stuff in the past where it could be debris coming into the outer atmosphere, and then it breaks up, and then it bounces back out from the friction of the outer atmosphere.
Okay, that makes sense.
So again, it's really hard unless I capture something really up close and personal where I can say I can see the shape and distinguish its actual size and exactly like more defining area of the thing I'm looking at. It's really hard to tell when you're looking miles up and trying to discern what exactly you're looking at. So it is difficult, but after you compare, again, after accumulating all this footage, and then you start to compare, well, this one has the same similarities. This is a satellite. You can see it's moving slow. It's way up there. The planes are obvious because you look for the navigation lights that are blinking.
Right.
You know, there's certain bugs. They just go all over the place, and they look kind of funny when you look at them on the screen. So yeah, space junk, usually you'll see a quick bright light, and then it'll break up, and it's gone. So that means it's burning up. It's just disintegrating. A meteor, it's usually way up there, and you're just picking it streaking like a shooting star. It'll go really fast. You know, so you're looking for certain distinguishable patterns that you can discern. This one is this, classify them. So that's how I do it.
But I think that that's a pretty good way of starting to break through, you know, that everything. You know, I mean, I do ghost hunting. I haven't ever done sky watching, and there are people that talk about orb, you know, oh, well, there was an orb, but, you know, the current theory is that orbs are actually dust particles that are illuminated by the light. And so, you know, by going through and being able to identify and sort out, this is natural, this isn't natural, you know, you can limit down the category to this is unexplainable.
I agree.
And that's what really needs to be looked at and investigated.
I'll give you an example. when I first started sky watching, and it was with this camera. This is called the SCB 2000. It's just a security camera. You know, you can get this for like $50. Then you have to buy the lens. But what I'm trying to get to is, when I first started doing this, I would sometimes be filming out of focus. And an object that should have been in focus that's really small is now bigger and it has a donut-looking shape to it. All because it's from the camera not being focused properly. Just like you just mentioned with orbs, with dust. It could be a piece of dust, but since the camera is not zoomed properly for a close distance, it's making it look like an orb. I'm just saying that's one explanation, similar to what the tether, they made a big thing about the tether when it was by NASA. They filmed it and they saw these objects going around the tether. It simply could have been the camera was out of focus and those were ice crystallizations near the tether and it looked like a bunch of little spaceships flying around it. I'm not saying that's you know,
what it was. You're not confirming or denying that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's my own personal opinion that it was very explainable that this was not UFOs. So you got to be careful when you start labeling stuff and classifying them. Now, I do have one object on my page.
Let me say that for a second. Do you find that it's really a good idea to film, you know, the night sky and then do a review after versus just sitting out there with binoculars or night vision goggle type things?
No, it's definitely better just to leave the camera outside because with this right here, this is a motorized mount. I can control with a little pad inside the house and do everything that I would do outside and move the camera either right or left, up and down. So this is a pretty good device that I have. And the night vision camera, I mean, I just leave it out there and let it roll. And what
so that's my kind of sky watching. You don't have to be
cold. No bugs in the summer. You don't have to worry about any of that. So it's more convenient. Plus, I use my TV as a monitor.
So it's nice and big.
Right. 60-inch TVs, you see everything, you know, pretty good in detail. I mean, if you're looking at a small monitor, then you're like, okay. But sometimes I will go outside in the summer if I have people here and do sky watches, and I'll bring out my 32-inch screen TV and hook it in there and then have the other cable running in here to record on my DVR. That's why I'm not missing anything. Because a lot of the times, you know, you're not, it's very difficult for a night process when you're filming 8-9 hours to look at a TV or monitor constantly. You know what I mean? You're gonna be, you know, distracted. You know, it's not like you're gonna stare at the monitor. So by recording it, it gives me the opportunity to go at my convenience and check the footage out if I missed anything. So that's what makes it so great to be able to have it recorded on a DVR and then go through the process afterwards. And, you know, at my convenience. Doesn't have to be tomorrow. It could be a week from now, you know. So that's the good thing about it.
So you were starting to say something before I interrupted you. I'm
sorry. That's my fault. I actually interrupted you. But I captured something September 18th, 2014. And the object was really small on my screen, which is telling me it's either way up there or the object is just very small. That's another thing. Distance and trying to determine what the object is for size, you know, you have to consider distance. So you could have an object that's like really low, but it could be like a small private plane and have the same appearance as a large object way up there and still look small. You know what I mean? So it's hard to distinguish what you're looking at. So on September 18, 2014, I do, like I said, I had this outside, I was recording. I was actually using my older camera system. And an object comes looping down, curving up, stops for a split second, has 3 lights on it, and then goes, gone, like warp speed, like Star Trek. Like you see how it goes warp? It looked just like that.
Wow.
So, oh yeah, that's the one, really the one that I have that I say, okay, this is something out of that 1% range that is unexplainable. Everything else I've done, explainable. This one, I have not. I've shown it to many people that I know within the ufology field. They come back with different explanations. So that tells me they're not sure. They're not giving me a conclusive, you know, idea or thesis about what this object could be.
How long was the experience? How long did you see it in the sky or on your camera?
I would say 5 seconds.
So very fast.
Very fast. And that's when I was saying earlier, it was moving artificially with the curve and then curving up and stopping and then gone. That's what you're looking for. Now, the problem with today is we have drones. This is too high to be a civilian drone. This is way up there. So it could be a military drone. You know, you always have to try to come up with the possible, plausible explanations that what it could be rather than what it can't be. So I'm always trying to reach for explanations because you want to stay grounded. You know, you see all this stuff on YouTube and people, what they do, photoshopping, hoaxing. That really is a detrimental aspect of people like myself that are doing it. That's like for yourself when you say you do paranormal investigations. Then you look on TV or some of these YouTube channels and they got this stuff that's obviously exaggerated or hoaxed. And you say, you know what? This is a joke. They're making my job that much harder because they're making a mockery of the whole investigative process.
Well, and they make a claim that's not true. So for ghost hunting, you know, going into a location and actually encountering something is pretty rare. I mean, you go to a lot of places and there might be bad energy, you know, there might be residual energy, which is more common. But as far as an outright haunting, not so much. And so it sounds kind of the same, where you can spend a lot of time watching the sky and looking and observing for that 1%.
Exactly. You think the thing is, Dr. Rita, I may never capture anything again in my life. I may never have another experience. But I have such a passion for this. And if you're not looking, you're never going to know.
Kind of like playing the lotto, huh?
Yeah, if you're not, you gotta be in it to win it. But you know, if you're not observing, a lot of people today, we're very observant, obviously for certain reasons, especially security reasons. We're very observant of our surroundings. We need to be. But at the same time, with everything that's going on, we should be looking that way too. Because even if there is some type of secret space program going on that the public is not aware of, hey, well, keep an eye to the sky because there's actually a lot of activity going on above us right now. And there are other unusual objects I captured, but you know, I think they're just satellites. But there's so much activity going on in our skies. It's, you know, it's not just for a person like myself involved with ufology. You could have a family and you could do sky watching from the inside of your home, or instead of just
outside, have a little picnic. How fun is that?
Exactly, and just to give that educational process, because I'm really considering, this is my next step, because I just don't want to be stuck on, now that I'm really into this with the cameras, I don't want to just be stuck on the search for extraterrestrials or anomalous activity in the sky. I'm thinking of getting a really big telescope and hooking up the camera eyepiece to the eyepiece of the telescope and doing some deep space exploration, planet observation, the moon, and make it really fun and make it like a astronomy class that you're watching. You know, I'll tell you. Yeah, so that's something I may want to do just to offset this stuff that I'm doing. You know, give that other aspect.
You know, one of the things that you just mentioned was, you know, things in the sky might be a secret space program. And it made me think, you know, they just re-released or reopened, I think is the right word. They just reopened the X-Files. Got my X-Files shirt on.
I love it.
And one of the things that I found really interesting in this reopening of the case file is Mulder's new thought process that Roswell was real, and everything that came after that was the government taking materials from the craft, and it's all government programs. The abductions of government, the hybridization or the genetic experimentation is government. So What do you think of X-Files release? And what do you think about this new...
I had the chills.
Of this new theory that he's come forward with.
I was watching it, and like I said, I'm getting the chills right now because it struck so close to me of everything that I'm involved with, because I'm sure you're aware of Dr. Stephen Greer. Mm-hmm. Dr. Stephen Greer had a presentation in, I think it was Washington, D.C. in November, and you can find it on YouTube. It's 3 hours long, and he spoke of the exact same thing that the storyline is being used for X-Files. I had a big smile on my face. I couldn't take it off, and I'm calling people, my friends, are you watching the X-Files? Who do you think of when you're watching this? Greer. Because Greer's philosophy is, yes, a lot of this is being done, manipulated by the government to create this fear-mongering as when it comes in relation to possible extraterrestrials. Because a lot of people that are in the field, they believe that they're here for a benevolent reason, not necessarily malevolent. Now, I am not discounting, unfortunately, all those poor people that suffer traumatic experiences from abductions, that they go through all that. It's being forced. Obviously, that's something that's traumatic. But that could be totally for scientific means that these beings are using us for. It's just like what we would use, I hate to say it, but like a lab animal, experimenting and, you know, checking out the species. Maybe they're trying to help us in that way, to change our genetics. Maybe they're trying to infuse it where we live long lives. Who knows what their agenda could be? But the thing about the X-Files is that exactly what Mulder was saying is exactly what Dr. Greer has been saying for quite a bit of time now. That the government is the one that's creating these abductions. They're the ones that are doing it, sending them to my labs, you know, and having them experiment on, messing with their heads to make them forget the experience that they've gone through. So, yeah, it was really awesome. And even with the Roswell incident, it still brought in back engineering. That they used.
Oh, he brought in every conspiracy theory that you can think of, free energy and this and that, but no reptilians. But I think that's coming up in the next episode.
Yeah, next week. But again, it was really great because, like I said, Dr. Greer also has, it's available on Netflix. It's called Sirius. And you can tell I'm a big Dr. Greer fan. A lot of people, you know, they think he's, you know, cuckoo, but I think the guy has a lot of good qualities, and he's saying a lot of productive things out there. And it's all positive. The message is positive, except for the governmental aspect of that they're abducting people, they're creating these scenarios, the whole deal. But he has a documentary called Sirius, and he also mentions about the free energy and how
it's on Netflix, I think.
Yes, it is. And he speaks about how people that were researching free energy were either mysteriously killed in accidents, their houses burnt down with all their knowledge, their database, everything else. It's really interesting to watch that documentary. I would recommend that for a lot of people. And also his presentation that he did last November in Washington, D.C. Because you'll say, if you're an X-Files person, after seeing that first episode and then seeing Dr. Greer, you're going to say, well, Chris Carter must have hung out with Dr. Greer and got all the plot from him, because it's exactly what the guy was saying.
I'm just so glad to have it back. I have to tell you, when X-Files was first airing, I thought they were going to do disclosure at that point in time. I felt like X-Files was getting the population ready, you know, mentally to finally disclose. And now it's back. It's like, maybe they'll do it now, which would be so cool to me.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, because Hollywood has been doing this for decades. They release these movies. Unfortunately, there's too much negative propaganda in relation to E.T. I mean, we've had a few that, like Close Encounters. I really don't want to mention E.T. because that was more, you know, like of a child type movie. But on a serious note, Close Encounters was like the movie to portray them in a more positive manner. Mm-hmm. But then you see Hollywood, it's all about money too, because they, you know, it sells to have these scary fear type of alien abductions or invasions. We have Independence Day 2 coming up next year. You know, that's what sells. But at the same time, it's also preparing the public. It's opening their minds. Says if something does happen, I'm not saying alien invasion, but something that we do have some kind of communication with extraterrestrials, it kind of softens the shock. Like the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. Perfect example of a great positive movie. You know, and I hope that that's what's going to eventually happen. Unfortunately, I think the government is going to suppress anything that's going on because it's always in the name of national security, and to use by whatever means possible any technology that they gain for their own nefarious purposes, to use it for the industrial military complex. That's the unfortunate side of it all.
Or to just make money. I mean, I feel like that technology is being fed into corporate America, where they can just charge us for it.
And the same way people are, you see what's going on in the politics in the United States today, with on both sides, with the Democrats and the Republicans, how you have what they're calling the outsider coming in. Well, at the same time, the way people are opening up their minds, they should also question about everything as far as ufology and the possibility that this has been going on and existing. And the way they're questioning our government politically, they should be also questioning it about what they're doing in other avenues as far as keep suppressing information from the public.
Well, I think that, and I've said this before, that once one of the secrets comes out, it's going to be like a house of cards, because then people will just move on to the next conspiracy.
Absolutely.
I mean, my thing is, some of the conspiracies, some of the things that you hear people talk about are kind of weird, freaky, and scary, and for example, that we have active bases on the moon and active bases on Mars, and that we are transporting people back and forth there, and there are credible people that are coming forward with that data. And my thought is, okay, but what if that's true too? I mean, how deep does that rabbit hole really go?
It's Pandora's box.
It is.
You open that up, I mean, like you said, everything's going to be put on the table now. Everything will be questioned as far as what they say happened. That's like, for a person like me that lived in New York City, I remember when flight TWA 800 exploded off of Long Island.
Bomb.
Well, they said it was a fuel line issue, that it was a failure in the fuel line, a defect, whatever it would be. But hundreds of people seen a projectile coming up and going toward the plane, and that's when it exploded.
You can see it in the footage.
And then, I hate to bring it up, but even 9/11, and I'm not talking about the towers, I'm talking about the Pentagon. That's the one that got me. I did not see, and I've seen footage, I did not see a big plane hit that building. I just never saw it. The debris field outside the building no way indicates that a plane of that size hit that building. They're saying that the fuselage, the engines, everything went inside that building. It's not rational. And then it's flying, this big plane, literally feet above the ground, just to get into that building like that. These guys were not supposedly experts. They were only trained to fly mid-flight. So now you got a guy coming down, able to maneuver the plane down like an expert pilot and bring it at ground level and go. It doesn't add up, Dr. Rita. It just doesn't.
Well, unless the Pentagon is really as big as the pyramids and this huge structure for them to crash into, but the Pentagon really isn't all that big.
No. And you can see the damage. There's a lot of videos out there, that you could find. Netflix has a ton of them, for example. But it just doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up.
And like you said, getting to the main point, exactly. It would open up Pandora's box, because now everything gets questioned. JFK assassination. Everything gets put on the table. So you're absolutely right when you state that.
Hi, this is Dr. Rita Louise. We hope you've been enjoying the program today. If you'd like to hear more from this guest or other guests we've had on the show, please visit www.justenergyradio.com.